In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about getting your musical intentions to come across clearly and unambiguously when it comes to writing woodwind, brass, and string parts using sustaining velocity-sensitive sounds. Now, for hundreds of years, keyboard players have enjoyed being able to command great volumes of sound from their instruments. Maybe not so much the harpsichord, but pipe organs, pianos, console organs, synthesizers, and now sample libraries. And particularly with regard to sample libraries, it's fun, it's seductive, it's a powerful thing to be able to play orchestral instruments from a keyboard and have them sound so authentic. I think it would be hard for anyone to play a sample of, say, 6 French horns playing in unison and feel dispassionate about it. In fact, quite the opposite happens, right? Very often when we play a sound like that, we feel all that great stuff I just mentioned, but as a result of getting caught up in all that stuff, very often we really don't listen critically enough to what we played to see if it actually sounds realistic, or maybe too keyboardy, or even if it's what we intended to write in the first place. For example, take this French horn passage played with an east-west velocity-sensitive 6-piece French horn ensemble key switching patch. So that was the basis for what was to become a larger sounding, more colorful orchestration. But first of all, I have to say that when I started writing that piece, I wasn't really familiar with the touch sensitivity of all the different key switching articulations in this French horn sound. But here I got an idea to write something that would have a basis in French horns surrounded by various orchestral colors. So I called up this French horn sound, picked the sustained articulation, and recorded the idea. You know, it sounds okay. It sounds dark and massive, which I'm digging. But aside from the notes, which were intentional, is that really what I want that part to sound like? Should I even question it? I mean, like I said, it turned out okay, and I didn't have to do a lot of work. I just had to play it in. It was easy. It was fun, actually exhilarating to hear that sound develop under my fingers, even though, like I said, I wasn't really familiar with how to play this instrument. So is this a deliberate musical statement, or one that just by random chance ended up sounding a certain way that I'm claiming as my musical intention? And just because I played it on a keyboard triggering authentic recordings of French horn sounds, is that enough to make it translate as a genuine musical performance of a massive number of French horn players? Well, for now, we'll forget that getting 18 horn players in a room to begin with would be a pretty expensive proposition. Here I think it's fine to indulge ourselves and write for 18 horns, and hey, why not, right? So I'm going to play it again, and then I'm going to tear it to shreds. So, do I really mean to have the bottom 2 voices play as solid sustaining blocks of sound, playing at very specific dynamic levels, while the top voice plays much louder over the top? Well, the primary reason it sounds that way is because, first of all, this is a velocity switching sound, and as I said in previous tutorials, there's no way to change the dynamics of the notes once they've been triggered. And again, not being familiar with the degrees of nuance available for the sound, I instinctively used my piano technique to play it. And that's why the top note sticks out as much as it does, because I was trained to take a bel canto approach to playing piano, so I was trained to lead and make louder the melody voices. But anyway, to the untrained ear, it might sound massive and cool with this melody that kind of soars out a bit above the rest, and then after making all that noise, the whole ensemble concludes unexpectedly quietly. And that's kind of what I was after. But it bothers my ear and doesn't sound authentic to hear these lower voices sustain so statically and increase their dynamic level in a very mechanical, stepwise fashion. But exactly that is an attribute of velocity switching instruments. So in some ways, velocity-sensitive brass, woodwind, and string instruments inherently put us at an expressive deficit. Then again, they're easy to play. And the alternative is harder work. You have to play in the part with a sound that utilizes dynamic crossfading between samples, and you have to learn the feel of the instrument that you're controlling the dynamics with, and you may not get that right away. But despite the additional effort, doing this is going to bring you so much closer to the experience of playing and controlling the expression of the actual instrument than it is just by simply triggering notes on a keyboard. And for playing sustained woodwind, string, and brass sounds, it's going to give you the opportunity to realize your musical intentions much more deliberately and potentially with a great deal more nuance. And I'm going to demonstrate that by turning off this region and turning on another one that plays the same part, but this time using a dynamic crossfade version of this sound where I control the dynamics with the mod wheel. And here I've got 4 regions, each one with a different mod wheel performance, representing 4 different possible variations of musical intention. So here's the first one. Here's another one. Here's number 3. And finally, number 4. And now let's hear that original velocity-sensitive part again. Compared to the second version, any of them, the first one sounds downright keyboardy, doesn't it? Like it was played on a keyboard using a sustain pedal and sounding a little too ultra legato, instead of being played by an actual group of French horn players performing each note on the page. So I'd like to suggest that when you're using velocity-sensitive sounds, that you be aware of what your musical intentions actually are or what you actually want them to be as compared to the sound you hear from the part that you actually played in. And if you're ever not sure about what your musical intentions are, my advice is to think about how you would want real players to play that part, or think about how you would write that part out for players to play. Both of those approaches are great for helping you form and refine and clarify your musical intentions, and once you know what you want, you can figure out what the best way is to mock that part up. Finally, try not to let yourself get lured into the sound of samples and the ease of playing in parts using velocity-sensitive sounds at the expense of putting in more thought and more work to play samples which offer a more fluid and flexible sense of musical expression that might very much better reflect your musical intentions.